Hi guys, welcome to my channel, and today's video is featuring my friend Sam. So I thought it would be cool if we filmed a video with Sam. She went to New York City during like the midst of COVID, and she has a lot of crazy, not crazy, like a lot of stories. So I wanted to do a little interview with Sam to see how her experience was, you know, the reality of COVID in New York City. Tell us about like where you're from, how you got into nursing, and like why you felt you needed to go to New York.
Okay. So I'm originally from Jersey. I was born in Manhattan, New York. I was raised in Western Jersey, and then we live in Washington now. I originally went to school for psychology because I wanted to help people just in some way that I thought I could get a job. And then I transitioned into nursing because there was something about nursing and nurses who I've always had that just resonated with me. I wanted to be the person to help people during the hardest times, during the worst times, who saw people at their worst and really was able to do something to change that. So I wanted something that would take me anywhere, regardless of where I lived in the world, or all I knew is I wanted to just help people.
And when COVID hit, people were like begging for help in New York. Why'd you go, and tell us that kind of, what was your calling and stuff like that?
Yeah, so when they first put out some help requests for New York, I kind of started talking to David, and I was like, should I go? Like, that's home, like they need help. And I have a job here that was so prepared, so staffed, so, I mean, they had the resources. And so when they called, I was, and then you started to see the news, and you started to see the devastation of, you know, friends, family members texting me, calling me, saying how bad it was. And I booked my flight within like 2 days. Like, I was like, all right, I'm going. There's, you know, it's home. So, you know, no amount of money in the world could have covered what I went through and got me on that plane. I just, you know, it's home. So home needed help, and you had to go home. So
disclaimer, I haven't really talked to Sam about this kind of stuff yet, and I wanted to wait for the video because I wanted to like get like genuine like reactions and stuff like that. So walk us through like when you got there, how different it was when you got there, you saw the city, and like
I might start crying.
No, don't cry.
It's okay.
Am I putting you through trauma?
No, it's okay.
Oh, so like, were you in a hotel? Did they pay for like? Tell us how, like, just the experience of how. Don't cry.
It's okay. Sorry. So y'all know New York City, Times Square. I mean, if you did the ball drop in Times Square New Year's Eve, you know that it is packed. And it's packed on a normal day. Like, you are sardines in the city. You can't even walk without smelling the perfume of the person next to you. Like, you know it. And so when I got there, the airport was empty. And I was like, oh no, this is bad. We got to the hotel, we stayed in Times Square, and the only people that we saw were people from our agency. And our agency was hired by FEMA. So we were technically, you know, FEMA mandated employees that were sent out, and they told us we were deployed, and, you know, basically sent us to like a war zone. And so we arrived, and the first day I remember we went to Times Square because we were walking around. We had to get some food to put in our hotel room so that we could take it to work the following day. And I think I counted 15 people in Times Square.
That's so crazy. Because I went maybe 2 years ago, and I cannot imagine that. 15
people. Yeah. And I remember taking a picture, and I just stood there for a minute, and I was like, oh my gosh, like,
ghost town.
Like this, like it felt like a zombie apocalypse, kind of. Like, I was like, where are all the people? Like, where are the New Yorkers? I mean, and then you saw pizza shops were closed, and I was like, no, something is wrong. Like, and I really thought like the news was exaggerating. Like, I really thought like, okay, obviously, you know, they're catching the worst things, they're showing the worst things, but where are the good things? Like, they're not highlighting the good things, so it can't be just all bad. And when I got there, I was like, I'm in for it. It's gonna be bad. And that was the first day.
And so, okay, so you were put in the ICU and you're an ER nurse. So, I mean, we deal with ICU patients, but not like ICU, you know, one-on-one patients, one-on-one. So talk about the ratio and talk about resources there. Like, how was it dealing with that?
It was different.
Yeah.
East Coast nursing and West Coast nursing are two different things.
Yeah.
We got there and there was no techs. We had no techs whatsoever.
Yeah.
We had no help. Techs are usually like your right-hand man. They, you know, you grab their arm and you run into battle with them. We didn't have that, so we had each other. We were just the nurses and then the docs. My first spot that I worked at, I transitioned between the Bronx and Harlem. The Bronx was intense. They did a makeshift COVID unit that was like a locked psych ward of the ER.
Really?
Yeah, and so they kind of shoved all these beds into basically like a bedroom.
Yeah, where it's not supposed to be. Like,
No.
No.
And so we were in the open area and it was just, I mean, there were just beds all right next to each other. It was just an open unit. Yeah. And so they made it so that you could take care of as many people as possible and try and save as many people, but they were all COVID positive. They were all sick. I mean, it was, it was every demographic. It was African Americans, Hispanics, Indians, white, Caucasian. Like, it was old, young.
Yeah.
20s.
Crazy. Yeah.
50s. People with no comorbidities, meaning no health history, no hypertension, no diabetes, nothing. People just sick in one room.
That will never happen here. I mean, knock on wood, but like,
it was
you're
just
not even close to someone that has positive. Like,
no.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, I think they had 4,000 of us fly in to help, and it was like people just started showing up.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was surreal. So that was one of the locations I was at. The other location, they actually had curtains that separated them. And it was a COVID ICU.
Yeah.
And it was different. I'm an ER nurse.
Yeah.
I'm a bred ER nurse, love ER. We dealt with COVID here. Not as bad, different. It was very different. And then going into the ICU was like, okay,
yeah,
we deal with ICU patients in the ER, but we don't hold them. We're maybe with them for an hour, 2 hours, if that. I mean, you know, we stabilize them and then we ship them off to the ICU and let the ICU team take over. And so it was different being on the other end of like, okay, I care about urine output right now. I care about, you know, how are the vital signs and the pressures stabilizing with the titration of propofol and Precedex and all these drugs that we don't use 16 times a day, you know?
Yeah.
Memorizing dosages of how much we can bolus at a time because patients are waking up trying to pull out their tube.
Did you have any training before you like hit the floor at all?
No.
Yeah.
We had no training, and I had such an amazing nurse who worked alongside of me, who's from Georgia, and she's actually a nurse practitioner, and she came out of nurse practitioning. She was a floor nurse, worked ICU with me, and taught me everything.
Yeah.
And so, cool. I mean, this is where critical nursing came in because it's like, okay, are you double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking? Like, you're the one who's really barely any scanning. Like, you had to
charting.
You had to. I mean, you did what you could to keep the patients alive and keep them healthy. And
so I had my viewers send in some questions for Sam regarding being a nurse in New York City during COVID. We'll go through all of them and then, yeah. So someone said, has it been steady up and down in your opinion? Steady or up and down in your opinion?
As far as COVID?
Yeah, in New York.
So when I got there, I think my friend who I worked with in the ICU had been there since the beginning of March. So I got there about a month or so in. And from there, I mean, the cases were just rising. I mean, it was like,
going up.
It was just every day, new case. And it was like, you felt like one day you were getting above water, like, okay, we're stabilizing these patients. Like, we're getting them somewhat, you know, comfortable on the vent. intubated, on drugs, on, you know, all these different sedation medications to keep them comfortable, pain medicine, you name it. And then it was like 6 other people come in with COVID. And it was just like one person would pass away and their bed was filled within, I don't even know how long, because there were so many cases that it just, you couldn't keep up with it. You really couldn't. And it was just, it was devastating seeing, I mean, just when you think like, okay, maybe we have a glimpse of hope, it was like, nope.
Yeah.
Next.
How did you cope with the toll on your mental health? So I know you had like, not only mental health, but like health issues. Like, talk about that.
So mental health is a huge thing for me. Y'all know this month is National Suicide Prevention. And it was hard. I mean, it was hard on different levels, and I think it hit everyone differently, but for me it hit home because that was my home. That was, my family lived 40 minutes across the river and I couldn't see my family. Or I saw my mom when she dropped off groceries at the hotel so I could eat food during shifts where I never had a break. And I couldn't hug her and I hadn't seen my mom in a year, you know? And so it was hard to the extent of, this was my home, but it wasn't my home. Like, it wasn't, I couldn't go just walk down 34th Street and get a slice of pizza.
Yeah.
I couldn't go get Calandras in Newark or visit my coworkers at UH. Like, there was just so many aspects of being home that wasn't home to me anymore. And so,
did you feel like you had PTSD or
oh my gosh.
after?
Yeah, I told my therapist, therapy is great. I tell everyone to go to therapy. I told my therapist we had to do double sessions when I came back because the PTSD was like to the point where I still remember all the faces. I still remember all, vividly, everything. And when I first got back, I remember seeing, so we weren't allowing family members to be with their loved ones as they passed away. And so we would have them on FaceTime. We would try every effort to see if we could get someone to come in for their, you know, their loved one. Our director of our ICU was a boss, and she made some way, somehow, you know, she would try really hard to get these family members to see their loved ones as they were passing. And I just remember the one case we had where family members were able to see the patient before they got really, really bad. I just remember the wife crying and like sobbing hysterically. And we're gonna have to leave this part out.
No.
And I just remember, like, when I came home, I remember standing in my kitchen and like looking over and like seeing her,
like the wife. Yeah.
The wife, and I just, you know, heard her crying. And I just remember like cases like that where I'd see snippets of like a patient here if I turned around too fast and I was like in my kitchen cooking breakfast, or I was in my bedroom like watching Friends on Netflix, and I just would look over and I'd see like the daughter of a father who was passing away, or, you know. And so
sad.
So the PTSD is real. It took me, I think I came back and I was back to work in Washington within 2 weeks, and I cried every single shift that I worked for 2 more weeks because I couldn't mentally function and recover from something that no one else had experienced or known how to go back to reality after that. And so therapy is amazing. Love my therapist. Because I think working through something that most people haven't gone through, or most people haven't experienced, of like, we all experience loss, we all experience hardship and, you know, heartbreak and all that stuff. But I think being the person on the opposite end of it, watching that heartbreak, watching that loss, watching that devastation, and not being able to do anything about it, and then being the person that has to respect the family's wishes or respect the patient's wishes, knowing it's torturing one or the other, and having to be okay, like, doing that as your part was, I mean, it was the hardest part. I mean, watching family members suffer, hearing them crying on the phone, updating them, telling them things weren't getting any better, explaining to them what it means when, you know, they'll never get off the vent, or they're living off of medications to keep them alive. Like, that was the hardest part.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. Like, I feel bad because I didn't want you to have to.
It's okay. It's okay. It's good to talk about it.
Were you ever scared of getting the virus?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
I mean, I'm scared here.
Yeah. I wasn't so much scared for myself because I feel like, honestly, we expose ourselves to it so much that it's almost inevitable, and I don't want to say that it is, but I mean, in our line of work, like we're so exposed to so many different things that it's like we have no control. I was more scared about my husband and bringing it home to my husband, or bringing it home to
I can get it, and that's fine to me, but giving it to my loved ones is like the scariest.
Right, because then you carry that responsibility of like, it's my fault, and you know, and so I just couldn't even imagine. And I know people who have quarantined in hotels and, you know, trailers in their garage, like, so that they can't see their family members. And it's just, that was the scariest part for me of, will I give it to someone I love?
Yeah. Last question. Did you feel like you had enough PPE, or did you feel safe with that?
So the best part about New York was the support that we got. And so, I mean, coworkers that I've never even spoken to, sending me boxes in the mail, like, of head caps, of, you know, surgical caps, of masks. I mean, you name it, they sent it. I mean, people sending me shields to protect my face, like things that I didn't think to pack in my carry-on, because you think you show up at a hospital and the hospital would have it. And the hospital was really, really good about making sure you had a mask. But, you know, you had to deal with what you dealt with, and depending on where you were at, it depended on what you got. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing. Like, your story is awesome, and I feel like it's nice to put people in perspective. So thanks for sharing. I'm sorry if it brought back stuff. I feel like the emotion is like how you tell the story. So thank you, Sam, for being on my channel, and I seriously love you, and you're so inspirational to like other nurses, not only other nurses, but everyone. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and go follow Sam on Instagram. It's Sammy, SAMII_Ruiz, RUIZZ. Yeah, so I'll put it down below. Thank you guys for watching, and see you guys in the next video. Bye.
Bye.